have $8 in my bank account. I'm in Paris.
Yeah.
I was losing weight because all I could afford were baguettes that cost 20 cents. And yet I was happy because I wrote down the things that were making me happy. And there's something empowering, like you save yourself. We save ourselves, right? Like, so whenever you're lost, just remember your older self will be the one who receives the actions of what you're doing today.
The Way of Will John.
People, what's up? As always, we have the best of the best for you at the podcast. Okay, the best of the best. You know what? I know you guys right now, you're listening to this. Maybe you're watching on YouTube, all right? But most of you are probably listening to this. Just go ahead and give the podcast a round of applause for having the greatest guests ever. All right, just give your. I'll start it off. All right, I'll start it off. Today's guest, my friends, Joe Franco, who's going to say her full name because it sounds way cooler when she says it. Also, she does basically everything in the world. Okay, she is a polyglot. She's a super businesswoman. She's doing incredible things. So, Joe, I'm gonna kick it over to you. What's up? And then tell us who you are, and we'll go from there.
Man, Will, you're a great hype man. I just got to give you a round of applause.
Hey, there we go.
Thank you for having me. It's going to be a dope conversation. I'm so excited to keep it going. This will be our third. So I am Joe, but my full name is Joana Rogério Pereira Franco. So I'm Brazilian. I was born in Rio and then grew up in the States and very much in between cultures. Because of that, I loved learning languages. My philosophy is if I'll never be from one place, I can learn a little bit about every place or as many as possible. So similar to you, I am a polyglot or, multilingual. I love traveling because obviously travel and language go hand in hand, but I think language gives travel new meanings. And I've hosted a Netflix show about the world's most amazing vacation rentals, which was exactly what it sounds like, wild, considering I grew up cleaning houses with my mom and was a whole YouTuber. Like for 10 years, I had a YouTube channel that had over 1 million subscribers. And the whole journey has been crazy, honestly. I've kind of built all of the things that I've always enjoyed. I've built a career out of them. And just when I think I've done everything that I thought was possible, a new opportunity presents itself. It's almost like a thread from a shirt, and I pull the thread and the whole shirt unravels, but in a good way. It's just a crazy time to be alive. I guess the conclusion of my intro is it's the best time to be alive.
Yeah, I always feel that I'm in the right time, in the right space. I always feel like that. And I mean, this is a simple transition into kind of a mentality that it takes to do what you've done. I mean, getting 1 million subscribers on YouTube, now having your own successful YouTube channel, that's big already, and doing this TV show host, the mentality that it takes, the desire, the ambition, the discipline, the clarity, all that stuff is incredibly hard. So how did you manage even bouncing from one thing to another while becoming a polyglot, while learning multiple languages? What sort of mentality, hacks, ideas, how do you structure yourself in order to make sure that you actually have the success?
Oh man, we kind of just touched on this in my podcast, but we're going to pretend like we didn't. But hey, y'all, come listen to my conversation because I pick Will's brain and we share a lot of similar mentalities, except I'm not a pro football player. Not yet.
You're Brazilian.
I know, right?
So there's always hope.
It's in my blood somewhere.
Just get you.
So I guess it started when I was younger. I was very introverted and that allowed me to be introspective. I was a quiet kid, very shy, didn't like people at all, which is ironic because now people look at me and think I'm the biggest introvert, or they think I'm the biggest extrovert. Sorry, can't speak English anymore. It's fine. When you host a show for Netflix, you have to be somewhat outgoing. But people in my family will straight up be like, what happened to you? How did this happen? You went from being super quiet and shy to kind of knowing how to command the room. And I give it credit to my experience in New York City. So I went to college in Manhattan, which was a huge dream of mine, but it was also a challenge because none of my siblings had gone to private university. We were undocumented for 12 years. I didn't travel growing up. So my life is like a series of ironies. Like a girl who grows up not even being able to leave the country, let alone travel, she ends up hosting a travel show, a global travel show on the top streaming platform in the world. Like, how does that happen, right? And it's very lucky, but it was also preparation. They say that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I'm sure you've heard of that. And I was always in preparation mode. I guess even when the goals seemed unattainable, I knew that I could control what I could control. And if that was doing a little bit of, verb conjugations after school or trying to memorize French rap lyrics, that's what I was doing in middle school. To deciding that I wanted to take Italian and French in high school, even though that wasn't allowed. I had to write a letter to the principal saying, I grew up bilingual, let me get this chance. They allowed me to. So I took the chance and I ran with it, to starting a school business club with 3 members and deciding that I was going to find a way to open the first school store, and going to Costco to buy wholesale products to start selling and making enough profit to buy all of the executive board members, like 9 students, tickets to go to Washington, D.C. for a conference. Like, that was all little Joe. And that, I guess, was me trying to work with what I had. And I don't think anything's changed. It's all come in from being introspective and thinking about what variables do I have and how do I stack them up kind of like Legos and build what I cannot even see as an example. Because back in the day when I said I love languages, people would tell me, you should be an interpreter. And I'm like, well, damn, I don't want to be an interpreter. I have stuff of my own to say. No shade to interpreters. They were like, well, why don't you work for the UN? And I'm like, but I like being silly and goofy. I don't really love politics. Like, it just doesn't fit with my personality. They're like, okay, well, why don't you go into marketing? I'd be the only person in the room who could express myself in a bunch of languages, and no one cared about what I had to say because I was the most junior. So it was just like life kind of gave me these no entry signs, and I just like looked for a new door and went in that, or made my own door, I guess.
Totally. And yeah, that's also something that we're going to definitely have to touch on. But I want to go back just for a second because I find it hilarious. Most of the people, the fans of the podcast, will remember the very first podcast that we did here, where I described the story of, just like you, they don't let you take more than one language in school, college, or high school. And it's like, okay, I mean, I understand, but I was with my advisor, and I've told this story, is that I wanted to take Italian and Spanish. And she's like, you can take Spanish, but you're not taking Italian. And I'm just like, what? What do you mean that I'm not taking? She's like, no, you don't do that. They won't let you do it. And so what I ended up doing, they basically put me in this math class that I didn't want to do. So what did I do? I studied Italian in that math class. I just basically blew it off. I was just like, I'm not doing this. And that was obviously my schooling. I got good grades, to be honest, which is quite interesting, because as long as the subject was somewhat interesting to me, I didn't have any problem learning. I'm not against learning. I want to learn, but you can't force me to do that. I can't be forced to care about something. I know you're probably very similar in that sense. And so I just said, yeah, screw you. I'm just going to do this. But to top it off, you talked about actually having to create who you are, what this is, what that life is, and everything. And that's something that we kind of harp on these guys. I mean, a lot of guys that are listening to this come from also the soccer world, the football background. They're trying to become footballers and all this stuff. And we always try and make sure we have different aspects, different people, scientists, people with different experiences coming on. And you're one of the people that's by far the closest to me that we've ever had on. And so it's just an interesting thing for, I think, people to see this woman doing this and this and this and this and structuring out, this whole day. So could you give us, I'm curious, and I think everybody also will be, could you give us a little glimpse into what the daily life structure is? And please touch on the journaling as well, since I know this plays a huge role in your life and what that does for how you actually decide who I am, how I'm thinking, all this stuff. I think it's really beneficial for guys to understand how you come about, what you should do day by day, and then week by week, month by month, etc.?
This is such a great question. I love digging into like the very micro habits because it builds out the bigger picture, right? With you, with me, with anybody who has a bunch of things on their plate. So I'm home right now, and that's a blessing and like a luxury. And it's a state of peace and serenity that I have definitely appreciated more as I got older. And my house is in Connecticut, which was a place I grew up in after we moved from Brazil that I swear I'd never come back to. Irony slapped me in the face in 2020 when I was like, damn, mom
Yeah.
needs a better place to live and I need a place to store my stuff. Much like you, I have a global life. I'm always traveling, but right now I'm home. And when I'm home, it's always a chance for me to reset. So I started writing down the main habits that I want to hit every single day. As many of those habits as I can hit, the better, but I'm not going to be upset with myself if I don't hit one or two. I just have made it easy for me to understand what are those things. And everything else that comes up, cool, I'll try to knock it off, but I need to hit these non-negotiables as we've discussed. So my non-negotiables are writing, journaling, reading as well. And that could be anything from nonfiction, something about like time or money or managing whatever, to something that's beautifully poetic and fiction, because I'm a writer as well. And so reading, writing, learning something, usually that's learning a language, running, and or walking. If it's like a stressful day and I don't have time to run, I'll go for a walk. And what else? Creating. Creating is something that I put on the list because I've always made videos and created pieces, really, like whether it's tying in my writing with video or just editing something. I want to create something because every time I create something, it gives me something to enhance. So those are my habits. As far as my day-to-day schedule goes, it depends. I'll have meetings a bunch of days, but usually the better days, I wake up and I make my coffee black. I don't have breakfast because it slows me down, intermittent fasting kind of life. Then I will take my journal and I sit outside of my house where the sun hits and I take a deep breath in and I observe the flowers and listen to the birds. And I think this has been where luxury really, it feels rich because today I was thinking about this. And this is the beauty about staying still for long enough to notice these small changes. I just started thinking about how whether I'm here or not, this orchestra of sound is happening. Whether I'm here to appreciate it or not, like the smell is sweet and delicious of the grass and of the flowers blooming. Whether I'm here or not, the birds are collecting twigs and building their houses. And it sounds like woo woo, but it's humbling because then it makes me feel like my day, it's not that deep. Like if I don't hit all of these crazy things on my to-do list, it's not that deep because we are very small in the grand scheme of this life, right? So it's like that gives me perspective. I'll start my morning with that. I take a minute to write. Sometimes I write about what I'm experiencing. That's what I did this morning. Other times I write about my mood, what's happening in my head. If I'm super stressed, I write that down. Then I usually come into my office and I like to make a list of things that I want to accomplish that day in the order. So I have a plan. And I know this is controversial. People do this the night before they sleep. And maybe I'll try that technique out as well. But usually I do it in the daytime. Then I get to work and I will go into deep work mode, which is when no distractions happen. I'll put my phone on Do Not Disturb. People cannot reach me. And I'll do that for maybe an hour and a half, come up for air, maybe another coffee, get some food, listen to a podcast. And that could be my learn something. But it's actually just fun. I just like podcasts. They're dope.
Yeah.
And then I go back to work and I usually use the afternoon to create something, to go into video editing mode, answer some emails, take some calls. Then after work, I will run and listen to an audio, whether it's like a podcast in a different language, whatever I'm learning. I like to listen to short stories in Greek or Pimsleur to practice my languages.
Nice.
Because then I knock out two things at once. I'll get my workout in, I'll do my language, and then afterwards, make dinner, catch up with my mom, call friends. And then very late at night, I have a journal that's a 1 line a day. So I usually write down what I did every day. It's a 5-year journal. And I'll compare what I'm doing now and what I'm feeling to what I was doing exactly 1 year ago. And that's always a really beautiful moment because like this time last year, I was super stressed and anxious. My Netflix show had come out, and I swear to you, Will, I was not in a good state. Like I was not well. I was
Right.
unwell.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
from the outside looking in, people were like, "Damn, this girl is like killing it. This is like the best thing that's ever
Yeah.
happened." And I was unwell. And now I'm like
Wow.
super chill, having the time of my life, balanced, happy, things are
Right.
growing. And as far as right before bed, I read, and I like to read before bed, or I'll watch something in a different language on Netflix. Like I was just watching this French
Totally.
show called 𝗪𝗡𝗪𝗟𝗡. And yeah, that's it.
Okay.
And then I repeat.
I mean, that's really, you are much like me, a very industrious person. I don't know if you know that term, industriousness. Have you ever read anything by Jordan Peterson? You ever read the 12 Rules to Life?
I've never read, but I've watched his lectures.
Okay. Yeah, his lectures are brilliant. I mean, obviously a very, very interesting guy, someone that can help people really get clear about their lives and what they're doing and why and stuff like that. But industriousness is essentially the act of doing, and you're full of doing things and accomplishing things, and as am I, also. But the reason I say that is because that moment that you have where you're sitting outside and you kind of take in the flowers and you take in the sounds and you take in all that stuff, that's a center point. And I mean, for me, I meditate a lot, right? And when I'm back in Kansas, like I am now, meditating outside with the sun, it's like a utopia. It's green, the birds are there, the sun is there, and in those moments, which is funny, and it does, like, you called it woo woo, but it's kind of this, these principles, these Eastern philosophy principle. In those moments, nothing's wrong. There's no issues. There's nothing. If you just center yourself in that moment, you realize that you have no issues. And obviously, it's kind of like a shout out for those people that are talking about that you need to stay present, and that in the present moment, all your power is there in the present moment, which is 100% true. Another amazing book. I don't know if you've read Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now.
Literally have never read any of these books because I've just been like living this lifestyle. Like I know that there's a book for everything, but I'm like, so I've been literally doing this for years. And I'm so happy that these books exist, because for people who are trying to develop these traits, it's really helpful to see it boiled down into chapters and like easy to follow principles. What I've seen is that it's a muscle, like this kind of present living, it's a muscle. Just the other day, I was shooting a language course, like of how to learn a language, and the videographer that I hired, we become good friends, and we spent the entire day filming. And for anybody who's ever seen anything on TV or like something well produced, usually that takes 12 hours of shooting for maybe like a 10-minute segment, to be honest. Like for my Netflix show, we would shoot 6 days for 30 minutes. And so we spent the entire day shooting. But the way that I work and the way that I've kind of designed my life after making travel videos for 10 years, I do not want to sacrifice living for work. So I do both at the same time. And the videographer who's done video for years, he was like, "Damn, Joe, hanging out with you for this day has made me want to be more present." Because we were at a Greek restaurant and I'm genuinely connecting with the man. Sure, there are cameras on, but I'm having this life moment with this man. Or we go to an Italian cafe in Little Italy, and I'm not speaking Italian or anything, but I'm sipping a coffee. This is the scene that we were filming, but I'm like properly sipping the coffee and observing people in the cafe. And then I chat up the guy who's sitting there, and I'm like, wow, this is like we're in a time machine. And the videographer, whose job it is to notice visual things, he realized and admitted that he had done not as much work to actually see them with his own eyes. And in doing so, it's like a very simple exercise to just notice what is happening around you. You are therefore happier because you become an observer to the world, and you no longer feel like you're the center of it. It's like life feels so much more aggressive and abrasive when you feel like you're at the center of the universe.
Yeah. And I mean, go ahead. Did you want to finish?
No, I mean, I think that's it. And our days are designed to make us feel like we're the center of the universe, because we have all these things we have to do with people that we have to answer to. But I think that's why this practice of waking up and the first thing that I do for the first 30 minutes of my day, at least on days that I have lighter schedules, I'll spend an hour and a half, 2 hours doing that. But my reason for doing that, especially in the morning, is to like give myself some perspective, because I know that the next 10 hours to 12 hours will be filled with these illusions that things are very critical and important when they're not, in fact. They're really not that deep.
Right. Yeah. We've all, and all the things that we are even trying to achieve, we are the ones that have put any energy and any importance onto those things. That is very much an illusory type of thing. It's not to say that it's not important for you to go out and get a job or do whatever it is that you want to try and win that game or whatever it is. It's just that understanding that you are the one that's placed importance upon that. And that if you take a step back and let that die off for a second and just be in that moment, you'll see that you have all the power that you need, right there. And we talked about on your podcast that I was stating that the only power that you truly have is your power of thought, your consciousness. The where you direct your attention is your power. There is no other power. You have no other thing that you can do and use in the world. And so what you do with that will essentially be the sum total of your life. The sum total of a great life, or these people that you love to look at and watch, is a sum total of them putting their focus and energy on one point or on a few things, becoming really, really, really good at them, right? And then those things gaining momentum, and then boom, right? You know, you learn one language, it's good. You learn a second language, it helps you a lot. You start to see relations. And now by the third one, you got all sorts of pattern recognition and things to link it up to. And now you've got this momentum, right? And once you can achieve momentum in your life, I think you can do things that you otherwise just would not only be capable of, but you wouldn't even dream that you're able to. Like I was explaining, earlier, just how in God's name, if you're 100 to 150 pounds overweight, are you ever going to think that you're going to win the New York Marathon or any race at all? It's like you can't, because you got to go through the first step of getting fit, and then from getting fit to training, and then from training to learning that you got to recover and stress and eat well and all this. You've got all these things that you have to go through, and so it's really funny to see people kind of kill their dreams and kill where they really want to be based off of where they're currently at now. Where you're at now is the sum total of all of your past attention, and it's where you used to look. If you turn and focus on this new thing and keep your focus there, you will come up with a whole new world and a whole new life. And I think it's just important for people to have that understanding. I mean, one of the things that you mentioned was that you kind of you would journal and then you would actually revise. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how that positive loop kind of puts you in the right direction, and how do you do that? Like, how do you visualize to keep yourself successful?
Yeah, so one of my hobbies that I had done for a very long time under wraps, because I was a public person, like I became a social media influencer, for lack of a better word. I don't love that word.
I know, I hate it.
Because I
hate it too. It's so stupid.
I'm an offline chick. Like and people are shocked. My actual friends, none of my true friends are like on social media like that. And neither would I, but I've found it as a very powerful tool to kind of build my dream career and life of flexibility and global thinking and all of the things. But anyways, when I was journaling for the last 15, 20 years, I never talked about it. I never shared that on the internet. And it wasn't until COVID, when no one was doing anything, and obviously I couldn't travel anymore, which is what I had built a career on, I started taking photos of my journal and posting it on Instagram with hundreds and thousands of people who followed me, which is scary because I'm posting like personal journal entries. And I didn't write those entries to post them. I had written them.
Right.
Then I posted them. And people were like, Joe, why don't you start a 30-day journal challenge? And this snowballed into 90 days of me asking questions to myself that I would post on Instagram. And then people all over the world started journaling with me. And it became a company that I now have had for 2 years. That's a membership program where people around the world journal. Men, women, from ages ranging from 17 all the way to 50. And they are all different shades. They speak all different languages. And the one thing that's very common is that they have, one, learned how to journal, two, learned how to get to know themselves, and three, have made actionable changes in their lives because of our journaling sessions. And so have I, to be honest. So it's like the journal club, perfect example of building what never existed. I had never seen a journal club before. I had never even talked about how I was journaling all of this time. But creating this community of journalers allowed me to like really perfect this tool of journaling and keep exercising it. So one thing that I always tell everybody is rereading your journal entries is 80% of the work. A lot of people, when they write down what they're feeling, they just vent. So what people do is they get into this negativity trap and it becomes a loop. You only go to your journal when you're at your wit's end, when you're about to explode with rage or when you're super sad. But that's such an injustice because when you reread that journal, what you're going to see is this very dark, sad person. And that's like way off. That's not who you are. So what I started doing, just like everyone else, when I first started journaling, it was for all the sad things. And I didn't enjoy rereading it. I'm like, I want to enjoy rereading my journal. I want to enjoy spending time in this person's brain. I want to look at these pages and say, I like this person. So I started observing myself as though I were a reader to my own life and asking myself, do I dig this? Like, would I want to be friends with this person? And I think that's a very powerful tool. I have a mentor who even told me recently that she journals about herself in the third person because it really allows you to look at yourself from the outsider's perspective.
That's
And when you do that, that's when you're like, damn, that's who I am. Like, that's who I perceive myself to be. So I would give everyone the advice to journal for starters, right? And you don't need to be a great writer. You just need to write, even make a list of all the things that you want to remember, all of the things that you currently feel, even writing down what you have in your bank account, what your physical stats are. I opened a journal the other day from when I studied abroad in Paris. And this is why I love journaling. I opened up to a page that said, I have $8 in my bank account. I'm in Paris.
Yeah.
I was losing weight because all I could afford were baguettes that cost 20 cents or salade parisienne from the bottom shelf of the Monoprix, which is basically like the Monoprix Express, which is like 7-Eleven. And yet I was happy because I wrote down the things that were making me happy. And there's something empowering, like you save yourself. We save ourselves, right? Like, so whenever you're lost, just remember your older self will be the one who receives the actions of what you're doing today. And that's why it's all connected. So even though like learning languages, journaling, being a businesswoman, it seems all unrelated, I think it's all connected to this feedback loop of like, who am I? What do I actually love? Do I like this person? And from there, everything can blossom.
And it's so hard for everyone, just as humans, to grasp that concept of that all of your actions, all of your previous actions are, for that future self. We just can't. It's for some reason, I don't know whether or not it's a fault of nature or if it's a fault of us as modern humans, how we really have a hard time of owning up to the fact that I'm in this situation, whatever situation that I'm in now, pretty much because of everything that I did, yesterday and the day before yesterday, and continually over and over again that I did for years or whatever it is. And the thing that journaling and writing, at least, or having some sort of, tangible proof of how you feel and what you are like in a certain moment, will then allow you to look at that and go, okay, well, this is why I'm not happy. It's if we go look back at all of these things, I'm constantly saying, I want to quit my job. I want to quit my job. I want to quit my job. And here we are 2 years later, I still have the same job. Well, I see the problem now. That's a very simple, simplified, thing. But guys, if you don't have any way of measuring how you feel and what's giving you all the things that you have around you, you can't really change it. It doesn't become tangible until you clarify it. And the thing is that when you write, you have to write distinct, clarified speech. It has to mean something when you put it down on the piece of paper. And when you don't write things down, things can stay nice and hazy. And we love the nice and hazy. It's nice. I'm going to quit smoking. Well, I will quit smoking. I will be fit. I'll be fit. How fit will you be? How? When? What are you going to do about it? When are you going to actually make sure that it happens and stuff like that? And, being able to write things down is really interesting, because I don't journal per se, but here's what I do. Most of these guys know that I have a fascination with lucid dreaming and the dream state and stuff like that. I have a dream journal. And most people, when you do write your dreams, it's your subconscious for the most part having a discussion with you, trying to convey things to you. And in order for you to get any sort of understanding out of that, you've got to write them down and you've got to read them back. And you'll start to see, I keep thinking about this. I keep this problem or this solution, and that's that's my way of kind of connecting, because I think that's what writing and stuff does. It's that connection to your subconscious. You've got to be able to pull, knowledge. That's greater than just your, everyday sensory experience, in order to figure out what you really want from the world. I want to kick it back even further, because I've already forgotten your languages.
Yes.
Which languages? What's your favorite language if you have one? And I know you got another project going on, so you can tell us about that as well.
Yes. Okay. So languages are dope. I think it's the coolest thing human beings have as far as superpowers are concerned. And it literally is a mystery. I've been doing a lot of digging because I'm developing a language learning course. And here's the wild thing about language. So we've been speaking for hundreds and thousands of years, but the actual way that language developed is a mystery, because without language, we can't explain how language was developed. And this is like meta, but it goes to show you how powerful language is, right? Like, as far as our species on Earth is concerned, that's our superpower. So I think the more language that I learn, I always say that we can live one life with one language, but multiple lifetimes with multiple languages. Because when I am in Italy speaking Italian, I am truly not only experiencing something I would have never experienced otherwise, because I'm in deep. Like, I go to villages where no one speaks English, right? So not only am I seeing things I physically could not access, maybe I could go, but I wouldn't be like in a home with a nonna understanding the cultural history and nuances of the language without having studied extensively and like learned this language. But I also become different. And it's because of the expressions that I absorb or have access to, or things that come naturally. So I think as far as like what languages I speak, I'm Brazilian. So my first language was Portuguese. But then when I moved to the States, I kind of had to shove Portuguese in the back of my mind. I moved when I was 5. So we were all scrambling to learn English as fast as possible. We didn't speak any English before we came to the States. And I grew up in a town with no Brazilians. Like, my mom specifically wanted us to grow up around all Americans, which is not the common immigration story. Most immigrants go into pockets of their same kind. So a lot of people don't even speak English, and they've been living in Danbury, Connecticut their whole lives because of the population of Brazilian people who have supermarkets and churches and all the things. So as a kid, it was definitely a weakness because I couldn't express myself. But then it became a superpower when I was getting pulled out of class to translate for the other kids when I was around like 7 or 8. Because once we moved, other families started moving. They didn't even speak Portuguese per se, but I was translating for the kids who only spoke Spanish. So I was like this Swiss Army knife for the teachers. And I was like, damn, I got more power than they do. And that's when I started realizing, like, if I learned a bunch of languages, I will be so useful. And that to me was the first motivator. Then middle school, started taking French, then Italian was added on, but I only really mastered those once I studied abroad in Paris when I was in college. And I was broke most of my life, very, very broke. So like all of it was a shock that like I was able to study and stay on top of things, but I didn't like school either. Like, my favorite part of French school was I luckily had a teacher who noticed this. And he gave me the assignment to learn French rap lyrics. And that's literally the game changer for me, right? Then when I started making YouTube videos, I presented it like this pilot of a young travel show, my old business partner and I, at a study abroad fair. And our first job was to study Spanish for 3 months in Latin America. So we did that. I learned Spanish in the summer, which was wild. And yet when I came back to the States, the college system didn't want to give me credits. because they said that I hadn't studied with a university. And I'm like, yeah, but people who study Spanish in your university for 4 years cannot speak at the level of Spanish that I have
Never,
accomplished in 3
ever.
months because I was going to school every day for 4 hours intensely speaking Spanish. How can you not give me these credits? I ended up fighting the system and got the credits. So then
Nice.
Spanish was added to the transcript and to my brain. So by the time I was like 25, I was speaking all the Romance languages, which are kind of easy. It's like you get one, you get them all. You still have to practice. It's not easy because you have to
Sure.
toggle your brain, but I could understand it. The difference was like now I could express myself in these languages. Then I stopped learning languages for I think like 4 years because it just was easy. I started making full YouTube videos in French, in Spanish, in Italian. Like I'd go to Italy by myself and vlog in Italy. I lived with French homestays. They didn't speak any English. I would ask them to film una cena, like let's do a dinner together. I was adding to my virtual family and my global family. Then 2 years ago, or I guess a year ago now, I started picking up Egyptian Arabic because my best friend's Egyptian. And every time I heard her speak, I'm like, I have a feeling I can learn this language. And while I'm not fluent, I know enough to have the basics of a conversation, to express myself. Same thing went for Greek. When I got to Greece, I went to Greece for the first time in 2018. And the language is crazy. Like I remember when I asked, how do I say thank you? And I start picking it up. Like no matter where I go, I was in Croatia and I'm like interrogating the cashier of like how to say, thank you. How do I say to take away? Like zaponiet. Like I know that I learned the basic things because I love it.
Right.
But in Greek, the word for thank you sounded like I could never even get it. So let alone understanding Greek now, like to a B1 level. I'm like, oh shit, I can like really speak enough Greek to survive. And this has only been in 8 months of consistent effort. So right now, yeah, those are the languages. Oh yeah, and now I'm picking up German too because I'm going to Germany next week, and that's a crazy language.
That's an understatement for the English thinking brain. German grammar, for the people out there that don't, it just seems like, what are you guys trying to do to my brain? Things, the order gets changed. I mean, I don't know how many. So you actually don't speak a whole lot of or any Slavic languages, do you?
Not yet, but whenever I go to Croatia, I've gone a few times. I love that country so much. Every single time I go, I'm like, I'm coming for you, Croatian. I'm coming.
Yes. I'm telling you, yeah, we got to make that. You definitely let me know when you finally do. I mean, like I said, I think before on 𝗪𝗟𝗡 languages. So, guys, if we did another podcast for 𝗪𝗡 languages, we also did one on Joe's podcast. We'll of course link all that stuff. But Egyptian Arabic, I love it. I'm obviously gonna learn Arabic. I know that this is something that I have to do. Just it seems like if I'm on a mission to kind of be that global citizen and really feel at home on earth, then this is one of those languages that'll connect you to the entire, Middle East, and just so many cultures. And also over here in the US, it's everywhere. Right. And so I love that. I love that feeling. And I guess my last question on the language side is, what of the Asian languages is going to be the first? Do you have a inclination of which one?
Yes, I do. I would have to say Japanese. I went to Japan and that everywhere I go, that's the thing that I do. And it took me a while to realize that because, some people go for food. Some people go for history or museums. I definitely go for language. And when I went to Japan, I stayed in this Airbnb in Yoshino, which is this like cedar woods working town. And my entire time there, I'm like, how do I say I'm allergic to shellfish? Kukakurui arurugides. How do I say that's my jam. Like I could do that all day long. I loved the sound of Japanese. I think Japanese, anime is really great, but the soundtracks of anime, I was like raised on that because my brother loved anime. But the lo-fi hip hop, like that's where that all comes from. In my history of the musical awareness of lo-fi, I'm like, wow, these people have good music taste. And so now I have a bunch of Japanese music on my playlists. I love music in general. What about you?
I was just gonna say, you're learning French rap. I think you said learning lyrics to French rap, and every country that I play in, I walk away with so many songs and so many things, and I just think about the fact that I actually don't speak Turkish. Here's another thing. There's a there's a there's a Turkish song, and now the title is I'm forgetting, but it's like I spent a lot of time in Turkey. I played in Azerbaijan, which is right next to Turkey, and heavily influenced by Turkey, of course. But I look at my playlist after these years of playing in Europe, and it's just stacked with all these songs. And of course, I'm loving the song, but I'm really loving the fact that I get to hear the language. Then it's like, all right, well, let me go check out the lyrics, make sure I understand everything. And then you get in your head, and now you've got this other tool that you just kind of passively listen to, but you're actually kind of actively learning the language, as you repeat these
That's my
words and these things. And then it's crazy.
Croatian. I literally know Croatian lyrics like "Tako mi draga znaj" or like "Mjesto za dvoje što ljube se." Like I literally
That's nuts.
know Croatian music,
Yeah.
but don't know what I'm saying yet, but like can say
Right.
it. Because I found music that I genuinely love. And so that's
Totally.
a part of my routine for sure. On Spotify, you can go on Spotify and a lot of the songs have the lyrics. So it becomes like a little karaoke machine in your pocket.
Ooh.
So I started
That's
learning
nice.
Greek rap, which is insane because I have to read in Greek and rap. And I did it. And it was like so much fun. I became obsessed. And then when those expressions pop up in language, I'm like, oh yeah, that was from that trap song that I remember.
Yeah. And that's also another, and that was actually fun for me what you would learn in school is not with the way people speak. There's a whole lot of languages that can kind of mimic what you might hear, like the very formal speak. I can't really think just off the top of my head, but in German, I love German rap. I think it's crazy sounding, it's cool, and I kind of just like that feel to it, the way they talk, right? And like in Italian, I watched Suburra. I don't know if you know this
Yep.
series,
Mm-hmm.
just crazy mafia series, and they have this. They're in Rome, and they're speaking this dialect, and they're the Roman accent, or they're actually speaking the Roman dialect, and it's just like what you learn and what you can learn from music and series will change the way. It's like when I speak Croatian, what I'm told, let's just say, they're like, you speak like you're a bro, you're this dude that grew up in Zagreb, you're that guy. And it's funny because when I got to Croatia, I had been playing in Serbia, I played in Belgrade, and so when I got there, those languages are mutually intelligible. I was speaking Serbian. I was just straight up speaking Serbian, and they would laugh all the time because I would call certain words, and the word for bread is hleb, in Croatian it's kruh, and so like they would be like, dude, this guy, this Serb, here's this black guy, you're in Croatia speaking, what is going on? Who are you? Where'd you come from? Why are you? What are you doing? And so I just the languages and the whole thing. I mean, it changes you, and I know that it's probably changed you, and it's what giving you all these opportunities that you're going to have. And I mean, even with this German one that you have right now. But in closing, you asked me on your podcast, which is a cool thing. I love the hosts that put their guests on the spot to say, what was not your average thought, or not your average
Joe.
What did you call it? Not your average Joe, but
like
message, right?
Yeah, well, it's like, what is the piece of advice that you can give, a tangible takeaway today that someone can start implementing into their lives to become a not average Joe?
Boom. That's the question that I have for you on my podcast for the actual Joe.
Cool. Yes, I am the actual Joe. There are many not average Joes. We all are. I guess my number one takeaway is to carve out those habits and your non-negotiables, because every single day is a chance to build. And if you look at your life as a series of bricks, you got to ask yourself, what house or temple do I want to build? But you need to know what kind of brick you need, right? So while I'm not a contractor, I do find myself being somewhat of an architect. And every single day of my life, I start thinking about these things that I'm spending, these chunks of time that I'm dedicating my attention and effort and love and energy to. Because when you do those things consistently, you will build something. The question is, do you feel content with what you're building? So try to zoom out a little bit and see, like, what is the big true north dream picture, And then when you reverse engineer it, what does that mean on a day-to-day basis? And just do that, do more of that, because life is going to pull you in a million directions. And it comes down to how you're spending your time every day.
100% correct. And I won't add anything to that, guys. Please go check out the podcast. Joe and I did check out her check her out everywhere. Like we said, she's already everywhere. Go watch her show on Netflix. Go check out the YouTube channel. Go check out her Instagram. We'll link all this stuff, obviously. So it's all going to be there. You guys will have no problem finding and checking all the things out. But Joe, this is amazing. I know at some point we'll make a language video in the languages that we share. We'll have to do that sometime. And definitely when you do Croatian, I will be right there to make sure that happens. So yeah, thanks for being here. Really.
Thanks, Will. Can't wait to see you in Zagreb.
Yes, of course. All right, guys. We'll see you later.